Welcome, everybody. I'm Kathy Nitz, and I'm with GolderCare Solutions and have been for over 20 years. Today, we're going to be talking about veterans aid and attendance. So if we're ready to go, let's move on. This is our Aging Empowerment Series. It's really an informal sort of chat. So if anybody has any questions, just raise their hand in the chat room and Gail will take your questions. We always leave time at the end for questions. But anyway, a little bit about us. GolderCare, we're an independent care advocacy group solving long-term care problems. We use a comprehensive approach focusing on the quality of life and asset protection. We navigate the complexities of long-term care, advocating for our clients and those that care for them. I read that so that I get it all in. But the word independent is underlined there because that's important. We don't work for the facilities. We don't work for the government. We are not a social service agency that depends on grants and funds. Our client is who we work for. That is where our loyalty lies. The next slide, this is a graphic that we use quite often. The patient or our client is in the middle. To the right is, to the left is all the things that usually Medicare takes care of. You, the patient, will go to your primary care physician. He may send you to a specialist. At some point, you may have outpatient services, maybe some physical therapy, or maybe an outpatient procedure, or you may go to the hospital. And then after the hospital, you may have some skilled care in a home care facility, either at home or sometimes in a facility. Those are all things that are sort of controlled by Medicare and the doctors. But on the right in the blue is all the other things that you're going to encounter that nobody talks about. There's public service agencies. How do they fit into all of this? When you're needing care, there's adult daycare, there's nursing homes, there's assisted living, there's private duty home care. Those are all different levels of care. Where do your needs fit into this? Then we talk money, there's financial services, everything from the public service agencies deal with finances to your financial investors. Then when we're starting to talk about how to pay for things, you got Medicaid, you got veterans benefits, which is the best option for you where you are at this time. And those two do not play nice in the sandbox. Their rules are completely different and they do not mesh together. Then there's legal services, which I like to call the foundation, because without the proper legal authority to do things, you're kind of stuck in the mud. There's Social Security benefits and how do they fit into everything? And then insurance. That's a big one. And that's kind of where my eyes roll back in my head and Gail comes in and saves me. But all of those things are things you have to navigate as you're aging. And nobody gives you a book to tell you how to do all of this. When I became a mother, I said, where's the book? Well, there's no book, and there's no book to aging either. GolderCare can put the pieces together to help you achieve your objectives. But all the pieces have to fit together like a puzzle, or you can't see the picture clearly. It's the same with services. All of the pieces have to fit together for a successful outcome. So today we're talking about veterans. Well, the VA offers numerous services and programs, and some of them include health care and prescriptions. A lot of the vets get their prescriptions through the VA, they can get it cheaper. There's disability compensation for those that either were injured while serving or as a result of their service. There's education and training. They have life insurance. There's housing, loans and so forth. There's record search to get information. And there's also burial and memorials, but that is just one little sliver of all of the services that the VA can offer. There's just tons of stuff. But today we're really narrowing it down to the benefit. It's called VA aid and attendance. What is it? It's actually a pension. It is not a pension like you were career service military. This is called a pension because it is to the veterans, and it is income, considered income, a monetary benefit which helps eligible veterans or their surviving spouses. It's actual money that comes to you to help you. But how can A&A help? Well, they can pay for unreimbursed medical expenses. If your income is not covering your medical expenses, let's look at VA to do that. It can cover assisted living expenses. Those are considered medical expenses for the VA. Also home care. And even under home care, there's lots of different programs. The VA offers some home care programs for free on a limited basis. But if we need to pay for home and community-based services, the VA can help with that. But we have to meet eligibility. It is not an entitlement program. When I say not an entitlement program, entitlement is the key word there. Things like Medicaid are entitlements, means if you meet the eligibility, the government has to give you the benefit. It is clearly outlined. And if they don't, you can sue them. The VA is not an entitlement program. It's very much determined. If your reviewer is having a bad day, that may affect it. But your eligibility is determined by the Veterans Affairs reviewer, and they use several factors, including your age and your diagnoses, to determine need for additional pension. If they look at your application and say, you know what, this guy's got enough money to make it to his, age that the tables say he's supposed to be 84. That's his average age or length of life, and he's got enough money. No, he doesn't get it. So it's very determined by your age, your diagnosis, and how much money you have. Many facilities and other social service agencies will help you apply for VA aid and attendance, but they don't give you advice on planning for eligibility. And what is really important in that, the planning for eligibility. Like I said earlier, VA aid and attendance does not play nice in the sandbox with Medicaid. So sometimes planning will be done for VA that will bomb you going forward for Medicaid. So you always have to be careful you don't do anything for eligibility for VA that will disqualify you for Medicaid in the future. If you apply and are denied, the appeal process could take years. People have told us don't even bother to appeal because it could take 10 years. It's like and when they do finally come up, well, you were denied, that's it, apply again. But it's vital that you have all the information and do it right the first time, because you may only get one shot. So one of the first things is you have to meet service requirements. You must meet service criteria. That means your discharge must be other than dishonorable. If it's a medical discharge, that's okay. If it's just mustering out because they don't need you anymore, that's okay. Anything other than a dishonorable discharge. You must have served at least 90 days of active duty, 90 consecutive days of active duty. We had one gentleman that went in, he got to about day 80, and in his checkup before he was going to be shipped out, they found he had broke his back when he was a kid, and he got medical discharge, but he only had about 80 days. So he didn't have enough days. And one of those days of service must be during a time of war as defined by the Department of Veterans Affairs. I always tell the story of my grandfather. During World War I, he signed up for the Navy, went to his training, and was given his orders, and they signed the armistice that day. So his one day was during the time of war, but he spent his next 4 years going across the Atlantic, bringing guys home from France. So we always called it a party ship. But he would have qualified because his one day of service was during a time of war.
Kathy, one other comment. We had one client who had served in the military, but it wasn't the US military. So
Yes.
that is the other qualifier. It has to be the right military.
Yes, it has to be the US military. I forgot about that. Thank you, Gail. Here is the wartime periods. For World War II, Korea, Vietnam is this gray area. There are dates there, but those are subject to other things. We had a gentleman come in, and we were talking about VA, and he was in Vietnam. He got out like February 10th, 1961. And we're like, oh, well, you got out too soon. He said, no, double check. And I was like, well, okay, I'll be happy to, but what are you talking about? Apparently, he was on one of two ships that were in Vietnam waters, taking guys over prior to actually declaring war. And those two ships had special dispensation that the guys that served on those ships would have wartime status. So Vietnam is kind of a gray area. You always double check. It's not a hard and fast rule. And then, of course, the Persian Gulf War from 1990, it's still going on. We've been at war since August 2nd, 1990. So the rules. Well, the rules used to be sort of fuzzy. Back in 2018, they changed some of the rules, and they were trying to get more of a bright line criteria, meaning less subject to the reviewer's day. It has helped considerably, but there's still a lot of gray area. There is now a 3-year look back on transfers. Any transfers done after October of 2018 will cause a disqualification period. There are new asset levels and new ways to calculate those assets. Used to be able to give away all of your assets and apply tomorrow, and you were under the asset rule. That is no longer possible. You can transfer the real estate without disqualification, but it must be done under very precise procedure. You can't willy-nilly just do a deed and transfer it to your son or daughter or whomever. And a couple's assets are all counted now. It's not just the man's or just the wife's. If there is a couple, it is all counted, including anybody that is living in your house. Rules to the contrary of Medicaid, you must tread lightly. Again, what you do for qualification for VA may very well disqualify you from Medicaid in the future. Another eligibility, it is based on monthly gross income, not what's deposited in your checking account, but your gross income. There must be unreimbursed medical expenses that exhaust most or all of your monthly income. In other words, your monthly income must be all used up on medical expenses every month. Your assets need to be determined to be insufficient to last your projected lifetime. Remember, I was saying if you're 80 and you're really healthy and you've got quite a bit of money, they're going to say, no, you've got enough money to last you. However, if you're 80 and all of your monthly income is exhausted on your medical expenses, then they're going to say, okay, let's give this guy this pension. There's medical requirements. You must have unreimbursed medical expenses, or UME. Those are medical expenses not covered by some other source, like insurance or other VA programs. The interesting thing that a lot of people don't understand, the cost of assisted living rent, the rent portion, is considered an unreimbursed medical expense. So other examples of UMEs are medical insurance premiums, your Medicare premium that comes out of your Social Security every month, durable medical equipment such as walkers, canes, lift chairs, anything else that you might need, oxygen, medical supplies, things like diabetic supplies, if they're not covered under your insurance, and then out-of-pocket medical costs, things that you have to buy that are not covered with like insurance or any other source of revenue.
Would this, Kathy, would this cover if I brought in-home help into my home to help me?
Yes, that's a good point, Gail. I think we cover it somewhere in the future, but in-home care is also considered an unreimbursed medical expense because nobody pays for in-home care except your checkbook. So let's look at what you could get as a veteran. These are the 2021 maximum monthly pension rates. This is money that comes to your checking account. It doesn't go to the cost, the vendor. It goes to you. A single veteran can get up to $1936. A veteran with a spouse or a dependent child can get $22.95 a month. Or a surviving spouse of a veteran. This is one that a lot of people are not aware of. You know, if grandma is still living and her husband was a veteran, she could get A&A up to $1,244 a month. So this is just an example with round figures. Let's say your monthly gross income is $2,800. So then off of that gross income, you take unreimbursed medical expenses, the cost of your Medicare, cost of your Part D, and these are monthly figures. Medical costs that aren't covered, those odds and ends, says that's 100, and you're living in an assisted living that's $3,000 a month. If you take all of those costs off of your monthly gross income, you're bleeding $285.50 a month. If we apply for VA income, you get an additional $1,936, you'd have surplus income monthly of $1,450 every month to use for whatever you need to use it for. So maybe you could have a bigger assisted living apartment. Maybe you could buy some medical equipment that you need that you've been doing without because there hasn't been money to pay for it. So, so where do you start in all this? Well, there's an application process, and I do mean a process. that includes roughly the following steps. You collect your information, you do the application, you send in the verifications, and then you get approval. That's in a perfect world. But proof. A lot of people don't understand proof. If you don't have proof, it didn't happen. Think like a lawyer. All assets and income count, not just what is in the bank. Assets include things like life insurance, investments, real estate other than your homestead. And what about those gifts to family and friends? What is too little or too much? What, do you give gifts to your family to the tune of $1,000 every Christmas? That adds up. You give gifts to your family to the tune of $100. Is that too little to even count? Veterans records, you have to have the originals. Well, what happens if you don't have the original? What do? Forms, all of the forms filled out correctly. You can get denied for a blank space or an incorrectly answered question. If you answer a question because you misunderstood what its intent was, it can be denied for something as simple as a blank space. You get one shot. If you forget something or you miss something, you're done. The appeal process, you might as well just forget it. Well, generally, how do you apply for VA in attendance or housebound benefits? You write to the pension management center that serves your state. If you're doing it on your own, you can write to them and they will give you instruction. Technically, that's what they say. Or there's local regional benefit offices. Now, this is pre-COVID information, and maybe Kim, you can help us out. I mean, there's regional offices in Illinois and Iowa. Those are the places that your application goes. But are they actually even open right now?
Yeah, so they are open, but but they're back in their offices instead of being remote. But what you can do is just drop off things. You're not going to be face to face in their office like we used to be, where you're sitting there with them while they faxed all the information and go through page by page. So they're going to have to go through it all and then contact you to see if there's something missing or recommendations. And I'll go ahead and say too, Kathy, when you were talking about filling out the forms and things being missed, the DD-214, that is like the most important form. With COVID and where it stands right now, if you cannot find that, they're about 9 to 10 months out from being able to get you a copy of that DD-214. It is really vital. And one of the veteran service officers locally just shared with me that there was a young gentleman that just got out of the service taking advantage of by purchasing a home and getting a little bit of a discount, some kind of help with the VA. We don't really do that, but he was sharing that he couldn't find his DD-214 and he did not get the deduction for purchasing the home because they're 10 months out of being able to get him the DD-214. So closing on a home, he missed out on those benefits. So we kind of can't talk enough about keeping track of those, or go ahead and get it now if you can't find it, if you think it's something you're going to need years from now, because it's vital. But
what is the name of the form? There's an era that didn't get DD-214s. What's the other name for that form?
I don't think it has.
I have that sitting on my table over here, because from like 1951 to 1955, they can't find the DD-214s, so they won't provide them. So I do have a form, and I can grab it, Gail, to answer your question, because this will suffice in place of the DD-214. So let me just grab it real quick.
There is a time when it was crazy when they were getting all the guys out of World War II that they didn't do DD-214s. They did this other form. Also, there was a fire in St. Louis where all of the records were held.
Yeah.
that destroyed a lot of them. So they don't have the DD-214s, but they have this other form.
Yeah, so this honorable report of separation can be used if it's during that time frame of the 51 to 55.
Right.
This will work, but
you can't use that lovely certificate you got that says honorable discharge. You can't use those.
no. That's
Next. So we have local veteran service officers in Rock Island County, Henry County, and Knox County. These are the Illinois ones. Now, during the pandemic, they're currently not open to the public. You'd have to call for information, how to drop off, things like that. But you can't just go there and sit face to face and talk to them anymore. In Iowa, Scott County, Clinton County, Muscatine, that there is those contact information. If we're too quick and you miss it and need that, just give us a call and we'll give you that contact information. So how to apply? Well, contact GolderCare. We can guide you through the process and advise you on the next best steps in your long-term care plan. You know, if you're not sure VA aid and attendance is right for you, if you're not sure you're ready to apply and you need some planning, that's where we come in. If your long-term care planning seems overwhelming, complex, or complicated, come and talk to us. Maybe we can sort through it and it's not as bad as you think it is. If you're looking for additional advocacy in your long-term care journey, we'd love to help you. And if you want to minimize some of the legwork you may have to do on your own, you know, we know the forms, so we know what goes in the blanks, we know what has to accompany it, and we know where it needs to go. We can streamline that for you. When to apply. It's just important to know when to apply as how to apply. Some of these are kind of the beware or caution signs. Free advice is just that. You get what you pay for. Be wary of all that free advice from your friends, hairdressers, husband when he applied. No two cases are the same, and be wary of that. Are you in a position to get approved? If not, or you're not sure, is there any planning to be done before you apply so that you are in a better position to get approved? Don't just apply and hope. Know before you apply that you should qualify. And if not, how do you make the right moves to qualify for VA and not blow yourself up for Medicaid in the future? So this is kind of our slide, getting professional help. With our help, you may be able to limit the amount of out-of-pocket funds you ultimately spend for long-term care. We can help you get that additional income. It's important to consult with an advocate, and I would add the word independent there, who will focus on coaching you through this overwhelming and bureaucratic, big letters, bureaucratic maze. Every situation is unique, and you need someone on your team. I mean, that's why I say, be wary of the, you know, what your hairdresser's brothers went through. Every situation is different. So what do you do next? Well, you call GolderCare. We can help you put the pieces together to help you achieve your aging objectives. You know, think of it like a puzzle. We have to have the pieces all fit together to have the picture correct. We have a multi-specialty team with expertise in medical, public benefits, insurance, finance, veterans benefits, and the law, and how it affects long-term care. So how do we work? Well, we do triage calls. Just give us a call. Let's talk. Let's see if this is something we do, or do we have to refer you to someone else that we can help you with. We don't really do the senior service consultations anymore because we do the initial consultation for free. Right now, we're doing those over the phone. We'll go through your situation. We'll talk about everything and see how we can help you and what your best course of action might be. Those are free. You're under no obligation to go forward. Usually it's about an hour, hour and a half of discussing every aspect of your situation. And that's important to look at all the aspects. So now we're to the point of questions. Like I said, these aging empowerment things are usually a quick go through, and then we talk about it. So does anybody have any questions, comments, confusions that you'd like to talk about?
If you are on the phone, you will need to unmute, and I think is it a *6 to unmute?
Correct.
And if you are on your computer, then you'll need to unmute yourself, or you can also type your question into the chat and I will read it, or the presenters can read that and respond to it.
While they're thinking, or if someone wants to speak up, please go ahead, but I'll just kind of share. It seems like a lot of times someone said, this is everything for my mom, and here's all her financials, and here's everything to go. And we've had somebody else, this is everything for my dad, and let's file. And sure enough, some different accounts appear that they didn't realize their parents, all their assets. And we've caught that quite a few times. Whereas if we filed when they were thinking we were ready to file, they would have been denied because they were over assets. It's $130,677. And I'm like, you know what? You're at $137,000. So we cannot file just yet. So there's a lot of situations there where we have to really make sure you know all the assets somebody has.
Yes, that's important.
I think another thing is a lot of people do not realize that surviving spouses are eligible. And now if you divorced the veteran, you are not eligible. But if you were widowed, then you're still in that, that group that is eligible for this benefit. And there are so many people that could help that do not realize that there's a benefit out there for them.
Yeah, I mean, this benefit is something that can get them through. It doesn't always help with nursing homes because the income plus this VA income is not always enough to pay the private pay rate at the nursing home. But this is really great benefit for somebody who needs somebody to come into the house just to help with bathing, or to be there so that mom can go to the grocery store, go get her hair cut, do some shopping, maybe pay for somebody to come in a couple days to run the vacuum sweeper to help out. And then when they go to assisted living, it's a great way to bridge the gap between their monthly income and the cost of the assisted living.
The other thing that it works for is, say you're the adult child and you're caring for the parent at home that is eligible, but you're still trying to work. Assume we're out of COVID, you're now back to a real office. We also could use it for adult daycare because they're providing care during the day and then you provide the care the rest of the time. And it's a way to keep someone home longer. It's basically an income stretcher, and it helps in so many ways. So you just have to be creative and think, oh, could I use help with this? Or how could we keep the parent home longer? Or could we use it for assisted living so the parent has more quality of life before moving to nursing care? All of those are great uses and a primary reason I think that this was created.
Very much so.
I do not see any questions in the chat area.
Well, Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. And if you think of anything afterwards, do give us a call here. You know, questions don't cost anything. Just give us a call and we'll give you some help.